Hey everyone, Hannah here. I'm actually coming at you today from my living room, so welcome. So excited tonight to continue our series called Lost and Found, where we're talking about things that get lost and then how they get found. So you remember we've talked about the story of the lost sheep found by the shepherd, talked about the story of the lost coin, lost by the woman and then found by her again. And tonight we're going to be talking about something else that gets lost, or should I say someone else that gets lost. But before we do that, I would love for you to answer this question. Have you ever thrown something away and then later regretted it? Talk about that with your groups. I want to share with you a story of something that I lost that if I hadn't found it, I would have really regretted it. And lucky for you tonight, this story does involve John Bartlett. Hello, John. When I was in university, I started dating John, the John Bartlett that you know today. And we used to go to Tim Hortons on dates because it was local and cheap. And I grew up in Moncton back when there wasn't a whole lot to do in Moncton, so we go to Tim Hortons. I had so much fun one time on my date with John. We would go and talk about like the Bible and silly things that had happened to us that week and everything, that I left that date. He drove me home, he dropped me off. And the next morning, I was getting ready to go out with my family, and I realized that my purse wasn't in the house. It was gone. And I thought to myself, where could I have left that purse? So I was looking around the whole house looking for it, couldn't find it, and then I remembered like, oh no, I brought that purse with me to Tim Hortons on my date, and I think I was just having so much fun that I completely forgot my purse, okay? And this was a 24-hour Tim Hortons. So my purse had been sitting in a booth at Tim Hortons all night long, had my wallet in it and everything, all my money, and I'm thinking like, oh no, there's no way that that bag has not been stolen by someone, because someone could have come in at like 3 a.m. and been like, oh wow, free purse, here we go. So I tell my dad this and he's like, oh my goodness. And I'm feeling like, oh, so embarrassed and guilty. And I feel like a little shame. Like, how could I have forgotten my bag at Tim Hortons? And my dad drives me over there. He says, listen, my daughter left her bag here last night. It looks like this. We know it's probably never gonna get found, but is it there? And you guys, amazingly, by some act of God, the bag was there. Someone had found it, an employee had found it. They'd taken it to the back room in the lost and found and waited for someone to come pick it up. So I just had to kind of describe what it looked like, and they were like, oh yeah, that's the bag. And it got found, and I was so relieved. And ever since then, I've been like paranoid about leaving things in places because I just don't want to lose it. Maybe you are like me and you also have sometimes lost something that you knew was valuable. Maybe something sentimental, maybe something that you knew was of great value, kind of like my purse that got lost. Maybe something that belonged to someone else and you lost it. And we know when that kind of stuff happens that we can often feel feelings of like guilt. We can feel really embarrassed. Sometimes we can feel shame, like how could I have let that happen? I can't believe that I did that. And today, we're gonna be talking again about something that got lost and later gets found, more specifically, someone. This young man that we're going to be talking about gets lost in the sense that he distances himself from the people that he loves. The decisions that he makes end up distancing him from his family and his friends and his community. And we all have times when we make decisions that maybe end up making us feel a little more lost, or that create distance between us and the people that we really love, or that create distance between us and God. So I would love for you to answer this question right now. And as you answer this question, don't use anyone's names or anything like that, but talk about this. What are some mistakes or poor decisions that people your age sometimes make? Hope you had some good times sharing some of those answers, and just so you know, we all have times where we make poor decisions. So no one is ruled out when answering that question. I know I have made my fair share of poor decisions that sometimes honestly did make me feel distanced, or mistakes that made me feel distanced from God. And today we're going to be talking about a story from Luke chapter 15. Remember, we're talking about just parables, stories that Jesus made up and told to prove a point, just from this one chapter, Luke 15. And remember that Jesus was telling these parables to the Pharisees, who were religious leaders who believed that people had to follow a certain law or act a certain way in order to be worthy or to be loved by God. So you can imagine that Pharisees would think like, oh, making mistakes or making decisions that distance you from people, that counts you out. Like, you can't come back from that sort of thing. I don't know if you've ever made a mistake where you felt like, oh, I don't know if I can come back from that. And they would feel kind of like that. That's the message that they would be telling. So here's the story that Jesus tells to the Pharisees in order to help them see things a little bit differently. This is Luke chapter 15, verses 11 to 19. There was once a man who had 2 sons. The younger said to his father, "Father, I want right now what's coming to me." So the father divided the property between them. That would be his inheritance. So once his father died, his father was going to leave him a bunch of money, and he said, "I don't want to wait for you to die. I just want the money now." So the father divided the property between them. It wasn't long before the younger son packed his bags and left for a distant country. There, undisciplined, he wasted everything that he had. After he'd gone through all his money, there was a bad famine all through the country, and he began to feel it. He signed on with a citizen there who assigned him to his fields to slop the pigs. And he was so hungry he would have eaten the corn cobs in the pig slop, but no one would give him any. That brought him to his senses. That would bring me to my senses. He said, "All those farmhands working for my father sit down to 3 meals a day. Here I am starving to death. I'm going back to my father. I'll say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against God. I've sinned before you. I don't deserve to be called your son. Take me on as a hired hand.' And he got up and went home to his father." We might listen to this story and think, wow, that guy is crazy. I can't believe that he did that. But I think that there are some things that he did that maybe we can relate to. So first of all, he was pretty impulsive. And I think we can all agree that sometimes we can be impulsive. He decides, you know what, I'm just gonna take my dad's money and go spend it however I want. He doesn't save it. He doesn't open a bank account. He doesn't think about his future. He decides he's gonna just grab that money and go. And we might think, wow, that is ridiculous. But have we made decisions before that are pretty impulsive that maybe led to mistakes or not so great things happening? I think we probably can all say that we have. For me, it's usually like buying too large of a size of ice cream because I think it's gonna be really good, and then I feel really bad. I feel like that happened to me yesterday. That's fine. We can also agree that this son was hurtful, right? I don't know if he really meant to do this, but by taking his dad's inheritance early, he was basically saying to him like, "Hey dad, you're worth more to me dead than alive, so give me my money and let me go." I can imagine that his father was probably really hurt by that. But again, we've all made mistakes or we've made decisions that hurt other people, whether we mean for them to hurt them or not. And finally, we can agree that this son was probably pretty selfish, right? He was thinking mostly about himself when he made these decisions. He wasn't thinking about his dad or how that would have hurt him or how that was going to impact life in their family or life in the community. He was just thinking, I want to get my money, get my inheritance, and go spend it the way that I want to live. And we know from the beginning of this story that the son actually did get away with it for a little while. He lived the life he wanted to live. He probably went to some parties. Maybe he got really, really popular. But then we're told in the story, if you remember, that there's a famine in the land. And he's already spent all his money. He didn't save anything. He didn't make a wise choice when he got all his father's inheritance to say, maybe I should put some of this aside for if something bad happens. And lo and behold, there's a famine. His money is all gone. He ends up working for a pig farmer, and he wants to eat even like the slop that the pigs are eating. He is tired, he is hungry. I can imagine that maybe all the people who were, partying with him and who thought he was really cool when he had a lot of money have probably all deserted him. We all know how that goes. And now he's left to say, wow, I made some really bad choices. I can imagine that he's probably pretty broken at this point, that he's feeling like, I made a big mistake, and how do I even come back from that? I would imagine he's feeling pretty lost. When we read this story, we can see that there are a lot of things that he has lost, right? He's lost that security that he had at home. He's lost the relationship with his father and with his brother that we'll learn about later on in the story. He lost his livelihood, and maybe he even lost his faith. I mean, if you're eating maybe only what the pigs can eat, you're probably wondering, like, God, where are you right now? So what he finally decides to do is go home, but not as a son. He says, maybe my dad, I know that I've lost that relationship, but maybe my dad will hire me as a hired hand. But you guys, what happens next is really crazy. Here's the ending of this story. This is Luke 15:20-24. I'm gonna read it to you now. It's just incredible. When he was still a long way off, his father saw him, and his heart pounding, he ran out and embraced him and kissed him. And the son started his speech, "Father, I've sinned against God, I've sinned before you, and I don't deserve to be called your son ever again." But the father wasn't listening. He was calling to his servants, "Quick, bring a clean set of clothes and dress him. Put the family ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Then get a prize-winning heifer and roast it. We're going to feast. We're going to have a wonderful time. My son is here, given up for dead and now alive, given up lost and now found." And they began to have a wonderful time. I don't know about you, but I think this is an incredible response. Instead of being really angry or being really mad, Dad is so excited to see him. He says, "I don't care about what happened. You were once lost and now you are found, and that is worth celebrating." We heard in this story too that the dad gave his son a ring and a robe and a pair of fancy sandals, and in that time that was like saying you are welcome back into the family. So he doesn't just give him a big hug and a kiss, he gives him these gifts which basically say, don't worry about what happened, you're welcome back into my family. Just like the father in this parable, God is so kind and so loving and patient with us. God is not an angry old man waiting to just like throw lightning bolts at us when we mess up. God is like a loving father, ready and waiting to welcome us when we come home, even after we have wandered far away. When you make a decision, or if you think about past decisions that you've made where you feel like you've wandered far from God, I hope you remember this story and you remember our main point today, which is that Jesus welcomes you back. We're going to take a minute now to talk about another question. And the question is this: have you ever felt far away from God? Why do you think you felt that way? And how did you get close to God again? You know, sometimes I wonder if one of the reasons why we find it hard as Christians to believe that God is welcoming back is because we maybe have had experiences with other Christians that don't feel super welcoming. And it got me thinking about us and our group and our church, or maybe Christians in general, and asking questions to myself like, are we a welcoming group? What could we do to be more welcoming? How welcoming are you? How welcoming am I? See, just like Jesus was angry with the Pharisees for being judgmental towards others, I wonder if there are steps that we need to take in order to be more welcoming. We can always be more loving and be more welcoming as Christians. We talked today about how much we need to hear the message of how Jesus welcomes us back. Well, think about people who don't know Jesus or people who feel really, really far from Jesus, how much they need to hear that message, that Jesus welcomes them back. And one way that we can share that message is by being welcoming to other people, being a space that's safe, loving people, not acting judgmentally towards them. Let's end with this question today. And it's a good one. There's lots to talk about with this question. So when you've been around people who follow Jesus, how have you felt welcomed, or how have you felt not welcomed? And you might want to use this follow-up question as well that says, what do you think our church can do to be more welcoming to others, especially people who have wandered from God? You might want to ask yourself, what can I do to be more welcoming to others? I can't wait to hear all your ideas about what we can do to be more welcoming to others. And I really do hope and pray that you yourself hear this message that Jesus welcomes you back. Our God is the God who forgives mistakes. He forgives poor decisions. He has the ability to heal and to redeem them. And when we make decisions and we feel far off, when we come back to God, He's not angry with us, but instead He's so glad and He celebrates to see us back. Just like the father who ran to his son and says, yes, absolutely, you're welcome back into my family. Let's talk about those questions now.